Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with some major news about an important election lawsuit that we just received moments before I've gone online here. I'll break that to you exclusively here. Plus, I'm told by the left that Trump is Hitler. Very dangerous rhetoric. We'll talk about that. A new election lawsuit by Judicial Watch on top of all of our other election lawsuits to clean up the rolls. Judicial Watch will be conducting significant election monitoring efforts. I'll provide you an update there. Plus, the FBI involved in a cover-up over one of their agents' anti-Trump animus. I'll give you a report on our work there. I mean, there's so much going on. I worry that I'm not going to be able to keep track on it. Oh, that's right. And there's this Kamala Harris Secret Service scandal. Another agent seemingly couldn't do their job, and again, another cover-up related to that. You know, first up is the issue of President Trump's safety. Now, it looks like, according to the polling data and what you read in the media, and I don't know how the election is going to go one way or the other, and I don't endorse or oppose candidates or candidates in as president of Judicial Watch, nor obviously does Judicial Watch. So we don't know how the election is going to go, and I'm not going to tell you how I think the election ought to go. But I do see politicians engaging in rhetoric that is detrimental to the safety of President Trump. And it looks like the left is beginning to worry about, well, they're not beginning to, they have been for several weeks. They're worrying that Trump may win, and so they feel like they're behind. So now kind of all of the restraints are off in terms of rhetoric. And when you have a man who's been nearly killed twice as a result of assassination attempts, to have this type of rhetoric really designed, in my view, and I don't think it's accidental, to incite violence, it's very disturbing. And of course, you know, one of the worst presidents of all time, one of the most corrupt of all time, Barack Obama, is pretending to be confused as to why everyone's so divided. Let's listen to what he had to say.
I don't understand how we got so toxic and just so divided and so bitter. And I get why sometimes people just don't want to pay attention to it. And we all have friends like that. We have family members who just like, you know, it's all a circus out there. I get that.
Well, the reason people perceive it to be a circus is because there are politicians like him who dishonestly are using race to divide America. He suggested, for instance, just recently, that black men should be targeted specifically because of their race and attacked because of their race for supporting supposedly Trump in too large a number. And then we have Kamala Harris herself make this statement outside her government home here in Washington, D.C.
So yesterday we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired four-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had. Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military that is loyal to him. He wants a military.
So that sort of extremist statement suggests to me that why is she just even running for office against him? Why isn't she engaging in military action against Trump if he's such a threat to the Republic? Talk about language to incite assassinations. And then listen to what Hillary said.
You know, one other thing that you'll see next week, Caitlin, is Trump actually reenacting the Madison Square Garden rally in 1939. I write about this in my book. President Franklin Roosevelt was appalled that neo-Nazis, fascists in America were lining up to essentially pledge their support for the kind of government that they were seeing in Germany. So I don't think we can ignore it.
So if your supporters or your opponents are Nazis, what does that mean? That's Antifa rhetoric that the Antifa types and the radical extremist left, as I say, to justify and direct violence. The violent left call all of their political opponents fascist in order to justify violence against them. Hence the phrase punch a Nazi. The left doesn't think Nazis are just, the old-fashioned Nazis that we all understand historically. They mean Nazis are anyone who disagrees with them. And certainly using the term fascist is their term of art by the left to describe anyone with a conservative or opposing political view. And who now has embraced that Antifa violent rhetoric? Vice President Harris. Let's go to the tape.
Do you think Donald Trump is a fascist?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I also believe that the people...
You see, this is the type of violent rhetoric used by Antifa and the left to direct violence at their opponents. This is incitement. You call someone a fascist. That's what the left calls all of their political enemies to justify violence against them. And if you want to know why Trump was nearly killed twice, this is the type of language. And this woman's and Joe Biden's Secret Service has denied and still denies Trump full protection that he's due, given the security threats. This is dangerous desperation, truly. And it's not a political comment I'm making. It's a concern about the safety of our republic, frankly.
And then you have, on top of smearing your political opponents, saying the worst thing you can say about them politically in a way that is foreseeably certain or likely to incite violence against them or be used to justify violence against them. You have her and Obama mocking Christianity, making fun of Christians. Look at what Obama was doing at this rally the other day.
My experience is the goal of the town hall meeting is you meet with your constituents, with citizens, with voters. You answer their questions. He decided, no, I'm not going to answer questions anymore. Let's just play music for half an hour. So he's standing there and he's swaying to Ave Maria and YMCA. And, the governor from South Dakota,
swaying to Ave Maria. Does he understand what Ave Maria is? It's a religious song used by Catholics and Christians to celebrate Mary, the Mother of God, Mother of Jesus Christ. But it's not just, of course, I've talked previously here, and you've probably seen the videos of the governor of Michigan, left-winger, mocking the Holy Eucharist with some pro-abortionist activist. Sick. And then we have Kamala come out this week and say she's going to force, well, this has actually been the Biden administration's position, she's going to force Christian doctors and nurses and hospitals who are morally opposed and otherwise opposed to killing unborn babies through abortion, she's going to force them to do abortions. Listen to this.
What concessions would be on the table? Religious exemptions, for example? Is that something that you would consider?
I don't think we should be making concessions when we're talking about a fundamental freedom to make decisions about your own body.
To Republicans like, for example, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, who would back something like that.
So no concessions. So the day after she suggests that President Trump is Hitler, she says she's going to force Christians to kill unborn babies. And you wonder why our politics are toxic? And again, I'm not raising this to say, oh, you should vote for so-and-so. You should vote against so-and-so. I'm highlighting a senior government official promising to abuse office in the future to target people based on their religious beliefs and violate their rights, their First Amendment rights in a way that we've never really seen before, but also to highlight the current policy of the Biden administration where they're fighting in court to demand that hospitals, contrary to state laws in some cases, or religious and moral objections, should be forced to kill the unborn. So they're trying to incite violence against Trump. And I don't think it's just pre-election violence. I think they think if Trump wins, they have moral and political justification to blow up the republic with sedition and insurrection. That's my concern. And as I said in 2020, according to the New York Times, they were wargaming scenarios that if Trump won, that they were going to engage in sedition and threaten civil war. Literally, in order to stop him from being president of the United States. You know, so I understand when candidates feel like they're losing or there's nothing to lose, the rhetoric gets heated. This is, you know, I understand politics ain't beanbag, right? The mocking of folks based on their religious beliefs, the mocking of Christians who disagree with you, and a willingness to attack them directly, and comparing the number one political candidate for the presidency, or number two, depending on which poll you read, as being Hitler, after he's been nearly killed twice. Very dangerous, very dangerous. Is there anything else I'm supposed to be talking about on this craziness? But, you know, my concern is that the president's safety is at risk here. I mean, this administration has refused and refuses to provide him adequate Secret Service protection, while at the same time, Kamala Harris is saying that he's a fascist and Hitler. Look what Biden said the other day. I almost forgot about him. He's still around.
He is talking about doing away with the entire Department of Education. He's talking, he means it. This is not a joke. This is a guy who also wants to replace every civil servant, every single one. Thinks he has a right under the Supreme Court ruling on immunity to be able, if need be, if it was the case, to actually physically eliminate, shoot, kill someone who he believes to be a threat to him. I mean, so I know this sounds bizarre. It sounds like if I said this 5 years ago, you'd lock me up. We got to lock him up. Politically lock him up.
Well, that's outrageous. You know, I thought he wasn't involved in any of that. He's sending a signal again to his Justice Department. Lock him up. And he caught himself there. You can see politically lock him up. What does that mean? So they want to jail him? They've been denying him security in a way that would likely, as I noted, before the assassination attempts, Democratic leadership in Congress were pushing legislation to deny Trump Secret Service protection in the event he was put in jail by their political friends. And that obviously would get him killed. So I don't make these accusations lightly, but the proof is in the pudding. He's been nearly killed twice, and we now know repeatedly he's been denied Secret Service protection of a sufficient nature to keep him protected. So you can be sure, as always, Judicial Watch will continue at least to FOIA where we can and sue where we can to expose this dangerous lawfare against him and the denial, and we have ongoing litigation already on it, the denial of security to the man. Because even if he wins, you can be sure the left is going to continue to press violence against him and think of ways to thwart adequate and significant security for him, especially given the threats he's facing. Now, the other big scandal, in addition to the entire Trump opposition, media, political, kind of swarming around the idea of turning Trump into a target of violence and trying to justify violent responses to his political positions. You have the ongoing issue of Americans concerned about non-citizens voting. 85% of Americans, I think the number is, it could be even higher, in a recent Gallup poll, believe in citizenship verification for voting. I think that's the number. My guys, if you can check that, it's just in the news this last day or two. And you know, the invaders keep coming. I mean, look at this video just from the other day. Look at this crowd coming.
Well, here's a video of more migrants preparing to illegally invade America with the tacit approval, and you will be sure later, help of the Biden-Harris administration.
So the aliens keep on invading the country, and in the meantime, the left is thinking of ways, A, to provide them amnesty, which is a, quote, pathway to citizenship and voting rights, which comes with citizenship. Their mere presence, as I've highlighted repeatedly, changes the political makeup of the country in terms of in places where they would reside, there's increased power because they're counted for purposes of census. And they tend to reside in more left-wing states. It increases their power. New York, California, etc. And of course, aliens who are present, because the laws are weak or too weak in preventing non-citizen voting, it's too easy for them to get away with registering to vote and voting illegally. Now, the left says, oh, you don't have to worry about that. Well, we have a right to worry about it. If no one has to provide any evidence that they're a citizen in order to register to vote, of course we should worry about it. And what's the reaction of the left? As Judicial Watch is doing this extraordinary work on its own to clean up the voter rolls. No help from the Justice Department. What do? They come in and sue Virginia for doing something states have been doing forever, which is removing individuals who are non-citizens and obviously not supposed to be on the rolls. And a court left-wing judge just approved and told Virginia to add 1,600 people who have self-identified as non-citizens onto our voting rolls. I mean, to call it a banana republic type approach, I mean, that gives banana republics a bad name. And here's Governor Youngkin, the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, on Fox today.
This is a stunning ruling by a federal judge who is ordering Virginia to reinstate individuals who have self-identified as non-citizens back on the voter rolls. And what's even more astounding is the vast majority of these folks had presented immigration documents confirming that they were non-citizens, and we recently had that verified by federal authorities. So here we are with a judge saying, put people back on the voter rolls who you know are non-citizens.
Well, that's an Alice in Wonderland type of ruling, isn't it? Now, they're going to appeal it. You know, maybe Judicial Watch will provide some support legally over this debate as it proceeds, because as I said, we're the national expert in this area in terms of using the federal law at issue to clean up the rolls. And it's designed essentially to make sure that if a state is engaged in a regular cleanup of rolls of people who moved away, they can't be doing it just three months, 90 days outside of an election. It doesn't stop them from moving someone who's not supposed to be on the rolls at all. A dead person, a non-citizen. and they got I think it's a Biden judge to rule in their favor, but it shows you the Justice Department clearly wants it to make it easier for non-citizens to vote. Why else would they object to keeping them off the rolls? And look at this Gallup poll. Actually, I'm a little too far away. I need to go up. Percentage of favor requiring all voters to provide photo ID at their voting place in order to vote. 84%. Requiring people who are registering to vote for the first time to provide proof of citizenship. 83%. Early voting, which gives all voters a chance to cast their ballot prior to Election Day. 76%. Well, you can count me in the 23%. And of course, 85%, 83%, that number is consistent with prior polling, by the way. And what is Kamala Harris's view on voter ID? Listen to this word salad.
Is agreeing to voter ID one of those compromises that you'd support?
I don't think that we should underestimate what that could mean. Because in some people's mind, that means, well, you're going to have to Xerox or photocopy your ID to send it in to prove you are who you are. Well, there are a whole lot of people, especially people who live in rural communities, who don't, there's no Kinko's, there's no Office Max near them. People have to understand that when we're talking about voter ID laws, be clear about who you have in mind and what would be required of them to prove who they are. Of course, people have to prove who they are, but not in a way that makes it almost impossible for them to prove who they are.
I don't know what she's saying there, other than she opposes voter ID. It's to the degree there's an argument there, it's a new twist on the patronizing attitude of the left towards voter ID. They used to, and Judicial Watch has exposed how the Obama gang hired an expert to say, and the expert went in there and said that black Americans weren't sophisticated enough to understand voter ID laws. They have absolute contempt for minorities. And in this one, they're pretending that all of you bumpkins out in the country, according to Kamala Harris, you don't know how to get stuff copied, with your water pumps, and you don't have electricity, and taking the horse and buggy to the local corner store. There's no copy, no way. You don't have phones or anything to get it. I don't even know what she's talking about. But what I do see is an extremist. And again, this isn't about her running for president. She's an example of every major left-wing national figure, the entire Justice Department apparatus, who oppose voter ID, and when you put it together with tens of millions of non-citizens unlawfully present and lawfully present here in the United States, we're talking a perfect storm of lack of confidence by voters in our elections. Last I checked, I think it's 15 states have no voter ID for people who are already registered to vote. I think you have to kind of show some identity when you first register, but once you're registered, typically in these states, you don't have to show any ID. California, Pennsylvania, Illinois. I mean, they're not small states. Here in the District of Columbia, D.C. has no voter ID. Congress, by the way, has ultimate and uncontrovertible jurisdiction over the District of Columbia, and they don't want to force a voter ID. Another failure by Republicans when they've been running Congress. So we have the Justice Department promoting a policy that will make it easier for non-citizens to vote. And at the same time, they lecture Americans that, there's no way that we're importing people in order to change election outcomes by having them illegally vote. And I tell you, I've always thought the purpose of having them come in, as I've said, was to change the political makeup of the country. That was the most significant aspect of it, by their presence, because they counted for the census, as I said, for apportionment for Congress and the Electoral College. But when you see the Justice Department go and abuse the courts and twist the law in an Alice in Wonderland flip to force states to keep people they know to be foreign nationals on our voting rolls, boy, another conspiracy theory, right? Proven true. So Judicial Watch is investigating what the Justice Department is doing. As I said, we're going to be monitoring these court cases. We may intervene with amicus or other legal action as necessary as they proceed up the courts. But in the meantime, unless the appellate court does something, Virginia is facing a court order to put 1,600 non-citizens on the voting rolls thanks to the Biden-Harris regime. But don't worry, the elections are going to be free and fair and clean, right? All right, what next? The breaking news. So I was just about to go live on this recording, on this transmission here, and boom, we just got a ruling from the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Huge ruling, finding that we're right on post-election day counting of ballots received after Election Day. Mississippi, they count ballots that are received for up to 5 days after an election. Our lawsuit on behalf of the Libertarian Party there in Mississippi was thrown out at the lower court. The appellate court just ruled Judicial Watch is right. There's an election day, and receiving and counting ballots after Election Day is contrary to federal law. And they've sent it, and I haven't read the full opinion, so I just had like a minute or two to glance on it before I started talking to you here. But the decision is historic. There are 13 states, 14 states, and here in D.C. that count ballots that arrive after Election Day. And this is the first decision that's found those laws to be unlawful. Because counting ballots after Election Day, besides being unlawful because federal law sets an election day, not an election day, not an election week, not an election month, it invites and is a inducement for fraud, right? Because it gives people a chance to manipulate the results, and they have the numbers, they know what to reach and what to do. And of course, it undermines voter confidence because people who see elections taking days to figure out who won, no one's fooled that that's normal and on the up and up. So this is an important decision by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals that upheld Judicial Watch's arguments that Judicial Watch alone had been pursuing and first pursued, first in Illinois, then in Mississippi. And this is the first the Circuit Court, major federal court ruling that counting ballots received after Election Day is contrary to federal law. Huge victory for cleaner elections and the rule of law. The case is going to get kicked back down to the lower court. I don't know, based on what the court's saying, whether we'll be able to stop this counting in this election. But certainly it sends a signal and suggests post-Election Day counting of ballots that arrive after Election Day are contrary to law. Huge victory, and I want to congratulate our election law team that made it happen. I want to thank our supporters that allowed this key victory to happen because of their support, because we can't litigate without your support. If you think elections matter and that they should be run free and fair and as clean as possible, then you're going to want to support Judicial Watch. And you can see we get the results. We don't win every case. We get setbacks like every litigant, but we're in there fighting for the rule of law wherever and however we can. Great victory. Again, Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals just ruled that counting ballots received after Election Day is unlawful. It's all because of Judicial Watch's heavy lifting with your support. Thank you very much for that. But of course, there's a lot of other things to do, right? And that includes sue again. sue more to ensure elections are going to be cleaner, which is what we just did. We just filed a lawsuit in Oregon because their voting rolls are a mess and need to be cleaned up. As you may know, Judicial Watch has been the national leader in using a law known as the National Voter Registration Act, a federal law that requires states to take reasonable efforts to clean up their rolls and conduct a program as such. Now, the rolls don't have to be perfect, but you've got to take basic steps to clean up the rolls. And these are the basic steps as best I understand it. Someone doesn't vote. Let's say Tom Fitton doesn't vote, and I live in Oregon. Oregon's supposed to send me a vote in a federal election. Let's say I don't vote this year. Oregon's supposed to send me a postcard or a notice of some type saying, hey, Tom, you didn't vote. Are you still there? And if I don't respond with a, yeah, I'm still here, keep me on, and I don't vote for the next 2 elections, so I don't necessarily have to respond. As long as I vote in the next 2 federal elections, 4+ years, practically speaking, right? They can take me off. It means I'm AWOL. I've gone, moved out, likely dead or whatever. And they're not even doing that in Oregon. They're not doing the basics. And Judicial Watch is exposed in state after state where that isn't happening. We've sued California, settled the case, 1.2 million names removed. New York, settled the case, 450,000 names removed. Pennsylvania, we sent them a warning. One county removed 69,000 names. Many more were removed as a part of a settlement. Kentucky, 500,000 names removed after a consent decree. North Carolina removed a bunch of names. In total, approximately 4 million names were cleaned up in the last 1.5 to 2 years as a result of Judicial Watch's litigation. But we're just not going to stop because Illinois, their rolls are a mess. California, their rolls, even though LA County removed 1.2 million names, the rest of the state is still a mess. So we've sued there. And just this week, we've sued Oregon because their rolls are a mess. Here's the lawsuit. Actually, Oregon's rolls are more than a mess. They're one of the worst in the country. One of the worst in the country. Judicial Watch announced today, or earlier this week, a lawsuit on behalf of the Constitution Party of Oregon and 2 lawfully registered voters against the Secretary of State out there in her official capacity. I announced it in a video earlier today. Hey everyone, huge news. Judicial Watch lawsuits led to the cleanup of 4 million dirty names from the voting rolls in just the last 2 years or so. But there's more heavy lifting to be done for cleaner elections. That's why Judicial Watch just sued the state of Oregon to force it to finally clean up its voting rolls, which are a mess. Federal law requires states to take reasonable steps to clean up their voting rolls, and Oregon hasn't been doing that. In fact, our new lawsuit, just filed for and with the Constitution Party of Oregon and Oregon voters, details how 29 of Oregon's 36 counties removed few or no registrations as required by federal election law. Oregon and 35 of its counties had overall registration rates exceeding 100%. Frankly, Oregon has the highest known inactive registration rate of any state in the nation. You know, dirty voting rolls can mean dirty elections. Oregon, as I said, has some of the worst voting rolls in America and needs to clean them up as soon as possible. In the meantime, Judicial Watch has lawsuits to clean up voting rolls in California and in Illinois. Simply put, millions of ineligible names need to be removed from the voter rolls under federal law, and Judicial Watch has been, is, and will be in federal court making it happen. Yeah, so in Oregon, we're probably talking several 100,000 names that need to be cleaned up. I mean, they aren't removing the rolls in the bulk of the counties, cleaning the rolls in the bulk of the counties, And people move in large numbers. America's still a free country, so people move around a lot, right? We don't need a license to move, even though the left is trying to eventually make that true, that they don't want you moving around. But we're still a free country. We can move, and people move by the boatload. And so that's why the rolls become outdated after pretty darn quickly, unless you keep up with it. Like in Illinois and California, we're still talking about potentially millions of names haven't been cleaned up and that still need to be cleaned up if they just did the basic work. Same in Oregon, there are hundreds of thousands of names. And I want to go through some of the details here. In our lawsuit. Page 7. So what drives the left crazy is the fact that we just don't make allegations and kind of guess our way through things. Our legal team, which is run by former attorneys, our lead attorney on the election law side was a senior official in the Obama Justice Department in the Civil Rights Division helping enforce voting laws. So we're not just making it up as we go along, unlike what too many others do when talking about elections. We look at the data. That's government data, data produced by the state, produced by the federal government, produced by the census, and we see the problems and then we try to pursue them. And if they're not responded, if the states don't respond to our highlighting the deficiencies, we go to court. So what happens is the states are supposed to transmit voter registration data, I think it's annually, but at least regularly, to the Election Assistance Commission, which is a federal agency that provides election registration data nationally and publishes it. So we look at the official data the states disclose. The data Oregon transmitted to that agency shows that 19 counties removed 0 voter registrations from November 2020 to November 2022, pursuant to Section 8D1B, which is a section of the National Voter Registration Act. And then I list the counties, or Judicial Watch lists the counties. I didn't write this, our lawyers wrote it. And these are big counties. I think Monotma is the biggest county in Oregon. Isn't that the county around Oregon, in Portland? Anyway, these aren't podunk counties. These are major counties in Oregon who aren't cleaning up the rolls. 10 other counties removed 11 or fewer voter registrations. This is the kicker. Look at that paragraph 28. In all, these 29 counties reported a combined of 2.4 million voter registrations as of November 2022. Yet they removed and reported specifically removing a combined total of 36 registrations in the last 2-year reporting period. $36. I mean, my guess is, looking at that number, 2.4, lawyers will probably get nervous if I start guessing numbers. I would guess at least 400,000 or 500,000 names are inactive or should be removed. And maybe a little bit less than that, but if they're not removing the names, I think about 150,000 people move around in the state or out of the state. So let's say only 100,000 actually moved out of the state, or let's say 50, right? You're talking hundreds of thousands. Okay, I'll be more broad. Between 200 and 500,000 names. That's my guess. But it gets worse. And this is the kind of detail that shows you why my guessing is probably right here. According to the Census Bureau, 14.5% of Oregon residents are not living at the same residential address as they were 1 year ago. So let's do the calculations. What's 14%, 15% of 2.4 million? Right? 360,000. And let's say not all of them have moved out of state, which would mean their registrations may be invalid in their local jurisdiction, but not in the state generally. I don't know if there's a local registration requirement in Oregon. But the point is, we're talking hundreds of thousands of names. By the way, I didn't figure that out just talking to you in my head. I had my colleague. Did you figure it out in the back in your head, or did you use a calculator? He used the calculator. And there's another astonishing stat, then I'll move on here. So another indicator of the fact that Oregon isn't cleaning up its rolls is that they have more people on the rolls than are eligible to vote and living there. And by that I mean, let's say you have 15 voting age citizens in your county. But you have 20 people registered to vote. Now that's a big problem, especially if those names aren't removed for years. That's what's happening in Oregon statewide. Listen to these numbers. In October 2024, plaintiffs compared the total number of registrants, active and inactive, on Oregon's voter rolls with the most recent 5-year American Community Survey estimates from the Census Bureau on the citizen voting age population in Oregon's county. This comparison indicated that 35 of Oregon's 36 counties had more voter registrations than citizens over the age of 18. In other words, these 35 Oregon counties, again, 35 of 36, every county but one, showed total registration rates exceeding 100%. And how much was it in terms of the excess? They have 119% voter registration limit. So they have 100% registered, which is, by the way, most states don't have that registration number at 100% or even close to it. But it's 19% on top of the 100%. So we're talking a fifth of the, well, over a fifth really, right? Of the list is bad. Now, are all of those names eligible to be removed immediately? Nope. But a substantial number are. And again, it's an indicator, a significant one, that the rolls are a mess. And they're not doing what they're supposed to do under law. The inactive registration rate is exceedingly high, meaning people who've been on the rolls for so long, they're, quote, considered inactive. Now, they technically can still vote because they're still registered to vote. And the danger of having names on the rolls that aren't cleaned makes those are names of potential voters. There's a pool of potential voters among those old names that can be used for voter and election fraud purposes. That's the reason we want the rolls cleaned up. And it also ensures that someone isn't voting in two places at once. If they move out and they live in California, they're on the rolls in Oregon, boy, they could still be getting ballots potentially and vote in two jurisdictions. And it might be hard to figure out that's the case. So typically about 10%, 11% of the rolls in a state are old, okay? And again, in and of itself, that's not a problem as long as there's regular steps to keep it taken to keep the rolls around that number and manageable in terms of putting them on the pathway to removal through this process I talked about earlier. In Oregon, the inactive registrations are 20%. 20% of the rolls are essentially dirty in Oregon. It's incredible. And again, Oregon isn't the only state. We've got a lawsuit in Illinois, got a lawsuit against California. I mean, many counties in Illinois, they don't even bother removing dead people. I mean, that's kind of like election list cleanup, voter list cleanup 101, figuring out a way to make sure you get the dead people off the rolls. They can't even do that in Illinois. So we've got this new lawsuit in Oregon, and this is what I love about Judicial Watch. We just don't stop. I mean, I talked about the issue of, and I want to bring it up to date again, the issue of people or states counting ballots that arrive after Election Day. And to sum up, here's a quick video on it. Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with some big news. We have a civil rights lawsuit for Mississippi voters who object to that state's counting ballots for up to 5 days that arrive, absentee ballots, after an election. Federal law allows for an election day, not an election week. We also have a lawsuit in Illinois where they count ballots that arrive for up to 14 days after an election, even without a valid postmark. I tell you, counting ballots after Election Day is a great way to invite fraud. It undermines confidence in the elections. Plus, it's downright illegal. And for those of you just tuning in, Federal Circuit Court, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, just ruled Judicial Watch is right. It's not legal, it's not lawful, and it needs to be stopped. Huge victory for the American people, the rule of law, and fairer and cleaner elections. We can't be counting ballots that arrive after Election Day. I mean, the fact that I even have to say that is incredible to me. But of course, it's the one-eyed man, right? And Judicial Watch is going to court in 2 places, and successfully so thus far in Mississippi, to stop that practice. And if you're interested in this issue of election integrity, and generally the attacks on the left on election integrity, because this is an attack on your right to vote and your right to govern yourselves. If we don't have clean elections, does the rest of it matter? I would argue maybe not, right? And that's why I want you to get my new book. I forgot, I should have been promoting it from the get-go here. How's that look? Rights and Freedoms in Peril, an investigative report on the left's attack on America. It is selling like hotcakes, but I want to sell more. And it talks about election integrity. It tells the truth about 2020 and the dangers about 2024 with election integrity. It talks about the lawfare against Trump. It talks about the border invasion. It talks about the attacks on our civil rights. It talks about the attacks on our First Amendment rights. You can get it at judicialwatchbook.com. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Go to your local bookstore. If you want to hear about the attacks on your election rights, your voting rights, your First Amendment rights, the effort to jail President Trump, the disaster of DEI and the destruction of America that could result from the left's race-mongering policies, the border invasion, the COVID mania, the cover-up of dangerous experiments like gain of function by the Fauci gang. This book is going to knock your socks off. And I tell you, these issues are hot now, and you need to get this book before the election. It's a great read. I've gotten nothing but positive feedback, and maybe people are going to tell me, Tom, your book is terrible. But I trust the people to be forthright with me, right? But if you go to Amazon, you'll see the reviews are great. Maybe we'll call up the Amazon page later and we'll go through the reviews. But I encourage you to get the book, and it's a great Christmas gift as well. We got to be I know we're not even at Halloween, but it's never too early to think about what you can get for Christmas. And give yourself an early Christmas gift. And as I said, this is pre-election must-reading. If you're concerned about what might happen on Election Day and you've got issues and questions, get this book. I think you'll have a lot of those issues either elevated in your mind or maybe put at ease in some respects, in the sense that you'll see how Judicial Watch is on the case. And Judicial Watch, we just don't stop. I just told you about our lawsuits to clean up the rolls, how lawsuits to stop the counting of ballots that arrive after Election Day. And we know there's an election day coming up, and we're not ignoring that. We're sending, as we announced this week, election monitoring teams to Wisconsin. Now, as I've noted, Judicial Watch is a national expert in election law. Our colleagues here, my colleagues, have professionally for the Justice Department monitored elections. So we know what to look for when we go into the various states that we've done in the past to investigate and monitor elections. Now, what we're there to do is to detect, expose, and deter fraud. That's why you have election monitors. And so it's an important regular activity by Judicial Watch around the elections, which is we go into select states to monitor the rolls, monitor the polls, excuse me. We clean the rolls and monitor the polls. And of course, we're doing it in a neutral way. We don't support any candidate. We're just there to watch, right? And gather information. Judicial Watch's lead election law attorney, Bob Popper, established the organization's election monitoring program several years ago. Bob is a former deputy chief of the voting section in the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice and a veteran poll observer for the Department of Justice. We've monitored elections here and abroad, so we know what we're doing. So at least in Wisconsin, I suspect the elections are going to be a little bit more honest because your Judicial Watch's polling observer teams will be there. But that's not all that we're doing for Election Day in terms of the instant issues of potential voter fraud, election misconduct, and malfeasance. We've stood up an election fraud hotline, an election integrity hotline based on the internet that allows any voter or concerned citizen to report to us any issues that they have. If you witness any suspicious activity at your polling place, have issues with a voting machine, or witness voter fraud or intimidation, this is what we tell you to do. Tell the local officials there immediately. Alert them. Call your state's election hotline, and that's readily available on the internet. Search for election hotline and the name of your state. And also, and this is as important, I would submit, send a detailed email to our election law attorneys, again, at electionlaw@judicialwatch.org. electionlaw@judicialwatch.org. And again, in your email, just be as specific as you can. Get to the details, the dates, times, etc. So our team monitoring the email can figure out what to do, if anything, with your email and try to get back to you. The more information you give us, the better. So don't be shy. So it's one way that we have, because of our expertise in separating the wheat from the chaff. So some people will go in and see something and say something, right? And that may be nothing. But other people may see something and say something and it may be something, right? And our team is able to figure that out quite quickly. So don't be shy about using this program to communicate any issues that you run into or are aware of related to voter fraud or election fraud. Now, the general advice, and of course we follow this advice because we're Judicial Watch's teams, our poll watching teams, our observer teams, are professionals. But this is true for citizens. Don't get into any confrontations at the polling place. If you see an issue, report it to the authorities there in a respectful, calm manner. Call your state, make a similar report, and then let Judicial Watch know. Do not, never, ever get into a confrontation with another voter. Stay calm, talk to election officials, and then tell us about it. Pretty good advice, right? But you're all smart patriots watching here, so you may think, well, Tom, I know what to do. I'm not going to be crazy, but you never know. Sometimes you see something upsetting and you get upset, and you may think you're acting calm, but you're not. So just think of Tom. What would Tom do he'd be calm. If he saw something, he'd go report it to the election observer, the election official. He'd call the state up and he'd type an email at Judicial Watch. So follow our lead. You as a voter can monitor the elections through the process. It doesn't mean you're there as an official monitor, but you can watch. Watch what's going on. If there's an issue, let us know about it. And you can be sure Judicial Watch will be at least in Wisconsin to uncover anything untoward happening there, Wisconsin being a big or key state in this year's election, as it's been seemingly in most every other recent election. So, one of the things, I'm going to get the book out again. One of the things I expose in our new book, Rights and Freedoms in Peril, is the detail of the lawfare against President Trump. It just never stops. And the book was written before the assassination attempts. But, you know, it was perfectly foreseeable that in a political environment in which the state and all of the political class and all the media class want to jail one man in retaliation for exercising his First Amendment rights and constitutional duties as president, some people would want to kill him. It's not a quick step from between one and the other. And so once those assassination attempts happened, Judicial Watch took a leadership role in investigating what went on in the Secret Service. Of course, we've gotten, and I'll talk more about another Secret Service lawsuit we have, but we've been focused on the fails there. But we've also been, in terms of lawfare, focused on the abuses of Trump and where this anti-Trump animus was showing itself, how it was showing itself, and the abuses that resulted in the various agencies. Never seen before, this lawfare against any one man. No man in history, at least in American history, has been targeted like Trump. No man. And it was interesting. So after the second assassination attempt, a senior FBI agent got up at that press conference. You may recall the press conference. And our team said, well, we know him. He's a controversial figure at the FBI. He's the the Miami field office chief, the supervising agent for the Miami field office. So he runs a pretty significant operation for the FBI. I'm looking for the press release because the name is escaping me and I don't want to get his name wrong. Here it is. It's Special Agent Jeffrey Veltri. And Mr. Veltri has been reportedly and credibly accused of retaliating against whistleblowers perceived to be conservative. And then secondly, the whistleblowers, according to a published report, before he was elevated to the position he currently is in, that he had to have they worked to scrub his social media posts of anti-Trump postings. And this man is leading or helping lead the investigation into the second assassination attempt of Trump. This is what the story said in November 2023 about Mr. Veltri. A whistleblower communicated this to Congress. The whistleblower called Mr. Veltri adamantly and vocally anti-Trump and said FBI Director Chris Wray and the Deputy Director and another top FBI official were involved in directing Mr. Veltri to cleanse his social media before he was promoted to the special agent in charge of the Miami office. Now, Veltri's Miami office has jurisdiction over the Florida home of President Trump. This is the quote. Ray and the other top officials wanted to ensure that Veltri appeared non-political. He was ordered to remove all his Facebook and social media posts that were anti-Trump. They weren't concerned, according to the whistleblowers, about Veltri's bias against Trump, but whether the information related to Veltri's political bias can be removed from the public domain. So they were doing, it was a cover-up, at least according to the whistleblower. And he was a senior official prior even to his being elevated to the special agent in charge at the Miami office. He was assistant or acting deputy assistant director at the Bureau's Security Division and oversaw efforts to suspend agents' security clearances if they seemed to be a right-wing radical, according to the whistleblower. So anyway, as we've disclosed through our prior representations of FBI agents and investigations, there's been a kind of purge directed at folks seen as too pro-Trump or too conservative. And some of them have had their, at least one of the former agents that we represented, he was an analyst with the FBI, you know, he's been vindicated since, after being targeted by seniors at the FBI for being, you know, saying the wrong things about topics they were nervous about. Now, the FBI denies it all. No one's ever retaliated against, which is bunk, and they deny that they did anything like this with Veltri. So what did Judicial Watch do? Well, actually, we had already asked the question, give us information about senior leadership and Mr. Veltri, and this decision to cleanse, or reported effort to cleanse, his social media postings. FBI officials referencing social media posts or Facebook posts generated by Veltri. Give us documents about that among senior FBI officials, including Ray. And documents about Trump and his political opinions. Very straightforward. How many darn documents could there be between this one top agent and senior leadership, A, about his social media posts or anti-Trump bias? How many? Why can't they just say we looked and couldn't find any? No. Instead, we got the, as I say, the hand to the face. And so we sued in federal court. We just filed a federal lawsuit against the FBI, which is supposed to enforce the law, for not following the law. Actually, the lawsuit's against the Justice Department because the FBI is a sub-agency of the Justice Department, at least for purposes of FOIA. So the Justice Department, with the FBI, is engaged in a cover-up concerning credible allegations that the top leadership of the FBI engaged in a cover-up to scrub the internet of anti-Trump posts by a senior FBI agent they wanted to elevate, who is now helping run one of the most serious investigations you would think that the FBI has been conducting in recent memory. I mean, we have to sue the FBI to get the time of day, by the way. They don't follow FOIA. They have contempt for the rule of law. It's one of the reasons that agency needs a serious revamping in the least. The Biden-Harris FBI is engaged in a cover-up of one of its top agents' alleged anti-Trump bias. This is why many Americans are concerned about the FBI's dangerous political bias against Trump, and whether the FBI can be trusted to investigate the attempt on his life. The same agency, well, I mean, getting aside from the fact that this agency trying to improperly jail Trump, who improperly raided his home, is now charged with investigating threats and attempts on his life that arose from those abuses, in my view. That's bad enough. And on top of it, the key agent involved has been credibly accused of anti-Trump bias, and the leadership of the FBI involved in a cover-up of it. And as I said, it's now the cover-up of the cover-up. Judicial Watch represented Marcus Allen, a decorated veteran, FBI analyst and witness before the Weaponization Subcommittee in a lawsuit against Director Wray for violating his constitutional rights, stripping his security clearance and suspending him from duty without pay. Well, they gave him his security clearance back because of this pressure that we brought to bear and other lawyers he was working with brought to bear, great lawyers. Of course, we've sued for the FBI records from the Trump abuses back in the day with Russiagate and all of that. I mean, virtually everything we know about the abuse of Trump is because of Judicial Watch pressure and litigation. And the FBI has been not the tip of the spear used by the Justice Department to target Trump and used by the deep state to target and harass Trump, spy on him, put him in jail. So Judicial Watch has repeatedly highlighted our work on the Secret Service, even before the Trump assassination. Our concern generally is that the Secret Service is dysfunctional, politicized, and corrupted. Secret Service agents, for instance, were bitten by Biden's dog with nothing being done to protect them or to stop it from happening. 25 agents bitten. It's insanity. As we've exposed the DEI mania at the Secret Service, just recently we got documents showing that the agency is supposed to be advancing this left-wing diversity, equity, inclusion, which is just just Marxism designed to divide and destroy the agency. This is the quote from the document we exposed. The Secret Service has made it a priority that, quote, diversity and inclusion is not just talked about, but demonstrated by all employees through every action, every day. And that's bolded. Not by us, but by them. So there was a story, it got some news around here because, it was a traffic accident in D.C. And it was Kamala Harris's motorcade got into a fender bender. And it looks like the agent driving I think it was Kamala's car, hit a curb. I think I know where it happened. If you live in D.C., you know where it is. So I guess I'll just describe it, and you can look it up on the map. Go look at the map, look at where the vice president lives, right? And you'll see, to travel to the White House, she travels down Rock Creek Parkway. You'll see the Rock Creek Parkway near her home. And then she gets to the White House, she goes up, I think it's Virginia Avenue. And Virginia Avenue has a little bit of a tunnel, and then you come up near the White House. I think I'm describing it correctly. And it was around that area on Virginia Avenue, I think, if I recall correctly, I guess I should have looked it up before I'm talking about it live to you, that this accident happened. So we asked for documents about it. And we're getting the runaround. It's just absurd. Because our concern, unlike the left, who is only concerned about making sure that Trump is hurt, we see Trump getting hurt, and we are worried about everyone else getting hurt who the Secret Service protects because of incompetence and these DEI issues, the distractions. I mean, the other thing we pointed out in our investigations, how They have different physical standards for agents, who are running or who have guns. Essentially, the agents that typically protect the protectees, such as the president and President Biden, Vice President Harris, and former President Trump. And there are significant differences in the fitness standards, much less, and obviously for women. That a woman engaged who meets the highest physical standard, if she were a man, it would be the lowest standard. Now, given the nature of the job, that's concerning to me. I mean, think of what they're expected to be able to do. I mean, we kind of saw some of this, the craziness of that DEI approach with the agents that were around President Trump and Butler, where you had female agents who were not tall enough, seemingly not trained well enough to provide adequate protection. And then, of course, they had to move him. And he's a big guy. I would, it's like, would I want to move someone my size? No, I wouldn't. It'd be hard to do. Would you expect a woman to move someone my size or move you? If you're a woman, would you expect a woman even to move you? If you became dead weight, were injured, and needed movement. So there are those basic issues that, the Secret Service, it's one of the reasons Secret Service is kind of a disaster in terms of morale, because all of these issues are coming up. People aren't getting hired and elevated on merit. That's the concern. Based on their ability to actually perform the job, which is very peculiar and has specific requirements, physical and otherwise. We asked for any and all emails and text messages sent to and from the members of the Vice Presidential Protection Division concerning the October 3rd, 2022 accident involving the vehicle carrying Vice President Harris and or the driving skills of the agent driving the vehicle at the time. We asked for defensive driver stuff, defensive driver documents showing that they had been trained. So I guess if you get in an accident, you have to go to a class, and we want those records. The Post reported in 2022, Vice President Harris was involved in a minor car accident, one that was initially, and by the way, falsely dismissed as a mechanical failure. I forgot about that part. They lied about what caused the accident. The driver of her SUV struck a curb hard enough that the tire needed to be replaced, bringing the VP's motorcade to a standstill. NBC reported the vehicle had been partially airborne. So that is a security failure, and I'm kind of laughing about it, but it's serious. I mean, let's say the bad guys are watching where she's going, and whoever can't drive puts the motorcade, freezes it because of an accident. That provides an opportunity to wreak havoc. And the concern is there's a DEI issue being masked here. The Biden-Harris Secret Service is in a dangerous tailspin and literally can't drive straight. And rather than be forthcoming about these issues with the American people, the Secret Service is engaged in a series of mounting and unlawful cover-ups. So it doesn't matter what we ask for. So if Judicial Watch asks for Secret Service assassination documents, we get the runaround. If we ask for DEI documents, we get the runaround. We have to sue. If we ask about a Kamala agent, essentially, according to reports, going crazy and having to be restrained by her compatriots in the Secret Service, her colleagues in the Secret Service. We had to sue to try to get anything. And here it was a minor car accident, and it's being treated like a state secret. So you know there's something up, right? And as we've highlighted repeatedly, these are security issues. This is not an issue about, well, you know, someone wasn't on the job, and who cares if the person was sitting in the office doing her receptionist duties and she went down the hallway to breastfeed her child. As we just discussed last week, there was a Secret Service agent who left her post to go breastfeed a child without telling anyone. This is putting people's lives at risk, these failures. This is why the Secret Service is in cover-up mode, and this is why we're fighting in court, because we feel strongly, A, there are good Secret Service agents who want to just do their job and not feel like they're losing their mind every day because of the bureaucracy, the politics, and the corruption. And we think all of that is putting people's lives at risk. We saw that with Trump. So a lot going on. And again, if you like what Judicial Watch is doing, I encourage you to get this book. And, you know, we have a special opportunity for you. If you want me to sign the book to you personally, there's a special thing. You can go and click on judicialwatchbook.com and ask for a signed copy. You pay a little bit more for the book, but you get a memento that is something you can save forever. I talked about it in this video.
Well, I'm here signing personally books to folks who have bought my new book, Rights and Freedoms in Peril, the new Judicial Watch book. Now, you can get a personal autographed edition by going to judicialwatchbook.com, clicking on the appropriate link, and we'll get you a personally signed book from me. It's a great book. It's out in bookstores now if you just want to get it outright. It's a great way to support Judicial Watch's work while getting all this information about the crisis that America faces with the left's attacks on our freedoms and our republic. And I tell you, Americans need to read this before the election. So, do you want me to get you a book? Sign it to you? Go to judicialwatchbook.com.
So it's a great book. You can get it online at judicialwatchbook.com or Amazon. And in the meantime, you can be sure Judicial Watch will continue to represent you, the American people, in courts across the land to enforce the rule of law on transparency, election integrity, and to protect not only people involved in the public policy process like innocent whistleblowers, but you, the American people, from government corruption and abuse. So with that, I wish you the best, and I'll see you here next time on the Judicial Watch Weekly Update. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.